I am a teacher at Parkland High School. There is a student here with a gun.
He's inside the school shooting at the gun!
Well, I had to do it because somebody had to do something.
After shooting in the theater, I didn't have a plan of whether to die or not.
Hello everyone, welcome to the channel, or welcome back if you've watched our videos before. Today we are covering a very well-known and highly requested case, which our members voted to be covered this month. If you'd like the chance to do the same, please hit the join button below and sign up for our $5 a month membership. Going into this video, we want to make it abundantly clear that we wish we could cover this case without shedding any light whatsoever on the monster that committed the attack. This goes for any of the perpetrators we cover in our videos, but we just wanted to be super clear on this one, since the shooter is still alive. Unfortunately, in order to fully and accurately portray the details in the manner that we typically do, we need to take a look at the attacker's life, which by default means we have to talk about him as a person. Our videos are made for the purpose of educating others on red flags and warning signs, so that events such as the one we will be talking about in today's video may be prevented in the future. We also do these videos to honor the memories of those who actually deserve to be remembered, the ones that lost their lives in the attack. With all of that out of the way, let's jump straight into today's video. February 14th, 2018 was like any other day for the students and teachers at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, located in Parkland, Florida. That was, apart from the fact that it was Valentine's Day, which added excitement to those who had plans later on that evening. But unexpectedly, when school was just about to come to an end, gunfire rang out through the halls in one of the many buildings situated on campus. What followed culminated into one of the worst school shootings to ever take place at a high school. Many people were injured and killed in the attack, leaving the community as a whole shocked and heartbroken. It's very common that when a mass shooting occurs, people wonder, were there any warning signs that could have prevented this? Well, in this case in particular, that is a massive factor. It's reported that even before the shooter was identified, people had a pretty good idea of who they were, as there had been countless warning signs over the many years that had unfortunately slipped through the cracks or were otherwise not taken seriously. Very sadly, the clear opportunity to stop the attacker before it was too late was missed by a long shot, resulting in devastation for several people for years to come. Let's jump into what led up to the attack we are covering today, including the many red flags that were brushed off by the people around him, starting at the very beginning of the shooter's life. Nikolas Jacob Cruz was born on September 24, 1998, in South Florida. Shortly after his birth, at just 3 days old, he was officially adopted by a couple eager to have kids of their own, Roger and Linda Cruz. The couple had been supporting his biological mother during the pregnancy, and it's reported that Linda was in the delivery room when he was born. Very early on into Nikolas's life, there was noticeably something different about him. It's reported that he developed much slower than normal and hit milestones later than usual. 2 years after Nikolas's adoption, the couple decided to add another baby to the family when they adopted a second little boy named Zachary, who was actually Nikolas's biological half-brother. The two of them shared the same biological mother, but they had different fathers. Because it comes up later in the case, let's take a quick look at their biological mother, Brenda Woodard, for just a moment. Back in the late 1990s, Brenda was reportedly homeless in Florida and was getting by doing sex work. Along with this, she was a drug user and a heavy alcohol drinker. These habits unfortunately didn't stop while she was pregnant with Nikolas, which may explain some of the issues he went on to have. According to the Marshall Project, Brenda said she drank almost every single day during at least the first 8 months of the pregnancy. It's reported that while Brenda claimed her pregnancy with him was a result of a rape, she did not want to terminate it, as she had for other pregnancies in the past. Instead of going that route, Brenda decided to adopt the baby out once he was born. Of course, we know that it was Roger and Linda Cruz who adopted Nikolas as a baby. I also read that they had set up a trust account that was solely used to help Brenda with common expenses, like rent and car repairs. A few sources state that she received upwards of $20,000 from the Cruz family prior to Nikolas's birth. A woman that worked with Brenda, Carolyn, later recalled when she found out Brenda was pregnant. The two of them were drinking together when Brenda suddenly became sick. Carolyn chalked it up to her drug use, but soon Brenda admitted that it was because she was pregnant at the time. After a bit of backlash from Carolyn, Brenda reportedly stated that she was going to give the baby up for adoption anyway, and that she was getting paid for it, so she didn't really care about having a healthy pregnancy. She had given birth to a daughter, Danielle, about 10 years before she gave birth to Nikolas in 1998. Danielle later testified that Brenda was a horrible mom. She even claimed that in the past, to pass drug tests while on probation, Brenda would smuggle in and use her urine. Danielle later said, "She had an addiction. She always put that first." Danielle also later claimed that she witnessed Brenda abusing drugs and alcohol while pregnant with Nikolas, which lines up with other accounts as well as records from her past. Brenda also had a pretty extensive criminal history, consisting of at least 24 arrests between the 1980s and the 2000s. Some of her charges included car thefts, fleeing from law enforcement, drug offenses, burglaries, domestic violence charges, weapon possessions, and battery charges. According to Jacksonville.com, Brenda was arrested upon purchasing crack cocaine while pregnant with Nikolas, and it's stated that the money that was given to her by the Cruz family is the only reason she was able to get out of jail. I don't believe they were aware of what the money was being used for. As I mentioned earlier, it was intended for general life expenses. It's very unfortunate that Brenda's harmful habits did not stop when she was pregnant. Some argue that because of this, Nikolas never really had a chance in life, that he was doomed before he was even born. I'm not sure if Brenda continued doing drugs and drinking during her pregnancy with Nikolas's younger brother Zachary, but as far as I was able to tell throughout my research, Zachary was not nearly as developmentally challenged as his older brother Nikolas, which may mean she cleaned up her act a little bit while pregnant with him. Either way, keep all of this in mind as we go throughout the case. It becomes a big part of the trial, which we will of course get to in a little while. But for now, let's get back to Nikolas's life. Moving on, as stated before, very early on into his childhood, Nikolas began to exhibit extreme behavioral and developmental problems. It's reported that it was in preschool that his teachers began to notice something wasn't quite right with young Nikolas. He attended Young Minds Learning Center, reportedly beginning at the age of 1, and the director of that school at the time, Ann Fisher, later testified about her opinion on his home life and her experience having him as a student. She said, "Nikolas was very cared for, as far as his home, in connection to him. He was in a loving environment home that tried their best. As Nikolas developed and grew more at the school, you would see all areas, in my opinion, he was delayed in. He was delayed in independent skills. He was delayed in language. He was delayed in gross motor, fine motor." Anne also recalled that many times, Nikolas had absolutely no expression on his face, and it was tough to tell what he was feeling at any given time. She added that Nikolas hardly ever responded when spoken to by staff at the learning center. Anne also stated that he had difficulty connecting with those around him, saying, "He isolated himself a lot. He would go sit in a corner and just observe. He didn't know how to socially interact with others." Anne also spoke about Nikolas's outbursts and tantrums at his young age, saying that he would often hit other kids, and sometimes even teachers. According to her, he would also bite other children, saying, "One child sat next to him in a chair, and he just didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to socially involve himself or what have you, and the child had his arm out, and Nikolas bit him. When Nikolas was about 3 years old, Anne filled out a form for the Florida Diagnostic and Learning Resources System. Their website states, "The mission of the Florida Diagnostic and Learning Resources System, FIDLERS, is to support and enhance exceptional student education programs." When asked about her motive behind submitting this form, Anne said, "To get Nikolas screened to see if there are any developmental issues for him, and if so, to get him the help that he needs." Anne later claimed that at the very least, following the FIDLERS evaluation, Nikolas began to get extra help with his speech problems. But it wasn't just Nikolas's teachers that saw the issues he began to exhibit at a young age. A neighbor and friend of the family, a woman named Trish, later claimed that despite her own daughter being younger than Nikolas, she quickly surpassed him developmentally. According to the Independent.com, Trish also said that Nikolas's mother, Linda, was reluctant at first to admit he needed additional support, but eventually gave in and took him to see a specialist. I did see that on January 23rd of 2002, Nikolas was officially diagnosed as developmentally delayed at just 3 years old, though the exact details around this aren't quite clear. The behavioral issues that came with the now-known diagnosis would end up following Nikolas well past preschool and for years to come, which resulted in an overall rocky academic life. A teacher that Nikolas had at 4 to 5 years old, a woman named Susan Hendler-Luber, who had experience working with special needs kids, later spoke about the aggressive behavior she saw from young Nikolas, saying, "Nikolas would push children, would scratch at them, would topple over furniture. He would stay away from other children, and if they got too close to him, he would basically pounce." CNN's article reads, "Susan said she began to observe and record his behavior, particularly his aggression and animal fantasies, in which he would hiss, scratch, and curl his hands into paws while acting like an animal." While she was Nikolas's teacher, Susan too filled out some sort of form, in which she noted that Nikolas rarely handled reprimands or redirection without overreacting, rarely cooperated with peers, and rarely made friends easily. She also marked that he only sometimes demonstrated self-control or followed rules. Again, it's reported that Nikolas reached milestones later than normal, and that it wasn't until around the age of 4 that Nikolas was finally potty trained, which is apparently on the later end. It's also said that it took him longer than usual to learn how to talk, for the most part. Like stated before, many people who knew the Cruz family were aware of Nikolas's delays. I read about a neighbor of the family who once called Nikolas and his brother over to meet someone that had just moved into the neighborhood, a man named Steve. She introduced the two boys saying, "This is Nicky, and this is Zach. Nicky's the weird one." Steve later said that he thought it was incredibly strange for someone to introduce children like that, but as time went on, he too felt like something wasn't right when it came to Nikolas. In fact, many that knew Nikolas when he was a child would later come out and claim that there was always something off about him. On August 11th, 2004, when Nikolas was just 5 years old, his adoptive father, Roger, reportedly suffered a heart attack at the age of 67 in the home. He had been in the den with both of his young sons at the time, before collapsing onto the couch. Nikolas witnessed his death and apparently ran to his mother crying. When she asked if he was sad because his father yelled at him, he said, "No, Daddy is dead." Linda had been a stay-at-home mother, and after the death of her husband Roger, she reportedly became paranoid about spending any money, seeing as she didn't make an income. They were a well-off family, though, who lived in a nice area, so I'm assuming she had some sort of savings or a life insurance payout that she was able to continue funding their lives with. According to many sources, though, after Roger's death, Linda unplugged any appliances around the house that were not in use, kept their home's thermostat at about 80 degrees, despite the intense South Florida heat, and even padlocked the refrigerator so that Nikolas and his brother Zachary could not eat without first getting permission. It's also reported that she kept so little groceries in the house that neighbors had to step in and supply food for the family on a few occasions. By the time Roger died, Linda was also in her mid-50s, making it difficult to keep up with two young boys by herself. This, paired with the fact that Linda was seemingly afraid of her kids, certainly affected the way that she would go about handling certain situations, especially as the two boys grew older. According to a former neighbor, Paul Gold, Linda once expressed that she feared Nikolas, with Paul saying, "She told me she was scared of him. She told me not to believe the nice appearance he had and angelic ways, and that he would turn and do bad things. And she was a little afraid of him at some times." Paul also stated, "He was Jekyll and Hyde. He was very nice, very polite, sweet person when he was sweet. And then, he would freak out and start throwing things and start breaking things and start holding his ears and screaming." Despite this, some of those that knew the family recalled that Linda did her best and loved the two boys dearly. Her sister-in-law stated, "Linda was very close to them. She put a lot of time and effort into those boys, trying to give them a good life and upbringing." Some sources state that it was when he was 6 years old that Nikolas was diagnosed with ADHD. Most articles only stated that he was a young child at the time, so I'm not completely confident on his age. Either way, as Nikolas grew up, his behavior began to get more worrisome and sparked even more concern from those who knew him. When Nikolas was just 9 years old, he threw a rock at another child, hitting them in the head. This marked the beginning of a several years-long streak of Nikolas being reported to the authorities for his violent and unpredictable behavior. As we talk about his life leading up to his attack, it will become apparent to you that numerous warning signs were very unfortunately missed or otherwise ignored. It's stated that the police in the area were very familiar with Nikolas and the Cruz family as a whole, as they had to come out to the neighborhood on multiple occasions to deal with complaints including Nikolas, Zachary, or the both of them. Though we are focusing on Nikolas, I want to make it clear that his younger brother, Zachary, also had very problematic behavior at times. Following the loss of their father, the two of them reportedly descended into chaos at home. They were said to have fought almost constantly, tormenting each other and their mother in the process. Though Zachary was 2 years younger, it's reported that he was both bigger and stronger than Nikolas. He definitely used it to his advantage as well, as I read that he picked on Nikolas a lot while growing up. It's stated that beginning in 2008, Nikolas began being seen by psychiatrists. At this point, he was 9 years old, and he was being treated by Dr. Lori Karpf. It's noted that he was also seeing a counselor by this time and had been taking medication. Dr. Karp said that Linda expressed her concerns, and she wrote in her report that he was having trouble with anger, cursing at a teacher and trashing his desk at school. At home, the mother reported Cruz took apart the mailbox and threw it in the street, and when he didn't want to do math homework, put his math book in the pool. I didn't see much else that mentioned this incident in particular taking place, but Dr. Karpf later stated, "The mother had told me that he had an incident at school where he had threatened to stab the teacher and an aide. He was aggressive, destroying property. Police were called." She also said, "By the time I saw him, the incident was over. He had calmed down." It's reported that Dr. Karpf did not feel that this was serious aggressive behavior and denied that Nikolas needed to be hospitalized, but that she did have his medications switched around. Sometime around 2008 or the year after, Nikolas began attending West Glades Middle School, and as I'm sure you could guess, he was having issues there as well. It's reported that he started out in special education classes, but moved to regular classes as time went on. In 6th grade, it's reported that he was very anxious, to the point that he would avoid raising his hand when he was struggling with a particular topic. His teachers later recalled that Nikolas was extremely embarrassed of his grades and would quickly hide graded papers and tests so that no one else would see them. It's also reported that he had trouble staying focused on classwork and was often unorganized. One of his teachers, Jessica Flournoy, who was experienced in working with special needs students, later said, "He did not have a lot of self-confidence in his abilities to do well." As time went on, and Nikolas progressed through middle school, his behavior began to worsen, and his minimal effort to do well ceased to exist. Overall, he began to spiral downward. Another teacher at the school, Carrie Yan, later testified in court that like his previous years in school, Nikolas struggled immensely and that he performed very poorly. His behavior was also in general just very problematic. Carrie later said, "He was so consistent with his inappropriate drawings and language." Nikolas filled out assignments with curse words and drew inappropriate pictures on his classwork, including stick figures having sex and shooting each other, middle fingers, and swastikas. He clearly did not take his assignments very seriously at all. In one instance, when working on a project where he had to come up with an advertisement, he picked his product to be a sex boat. Carrie also recalled how she felt about him personally, saying, "Nikolas made me very uncomfortable, and I immediately thought something was kind of up. I put him on my radar to watch him, keep an eye on him." There was also a time that he lunged towards Carrie and laughed afterward. She claimed that he would act out in all situations, including when he hit a kid during a fire drill and ran into the street during another, almost being hit by a car as a result. Carrie also said that one time, after she praised him for actually doing an assignment correctly, he replied with, "I'm a bad kid. I want to kill." Her concern was so apparent that during an assessment, Carrie made a note that said, "I strongly feel Nikolas is a danger to the students and faculty at this school. I do not feel that he understands the difference between his violent video games and reality. He's constantly showing aggressive behavior and poor judgment. His drawings in class show violent acts, people shooting at each other or creepy sexual pictures, dogs with large penises. He has pretended to masturbate in class. He uses foul language and disregards everyone around him. Nikolas has been reprimanded on many occasions, verbally, referrals, IS, etc., and continued to act in the same manner over and over again. I would like to see him sent to a facility that is more prepared and has the proper setting to deal with this type of child." WDSU.com even reports that Carrie had the forethought to keep Nikolas's assignments, rather than return them to him, as she did with other students, for documentation purposes, just in case they were needed in the future. That is how concerning Nikolas was to her. She did apparently report his behavior to school administrators, showing them his schoolwork riddled with curse words and inappropriate drawings. But according to her, they didn't really do much to help. It was in middle school that it seems his behavior intensified, to a point he hadn't reached before. Nikolas began having vocal outbursts, and like stated previously, he acted very inappropriately. The principal of West Glades reportedly stated that in his 35 years of working in education, he had never had a student quite like Nikolas. The Washington Post even states that some teachers at West Glades Middle School fully banned him from their classes due to his erratic and concerning behavior. According to the same article, one teacher claimed that Nikolas was restricted from having a backpack at school, saying, "We were told last year that he wasn't allowed on campus with a backpack on him." He was also subjected to searches by security to ensure he didn't have any weapons on his person. One of his teachers during this time in his life also said, "I can say I was so uncomfortable around him. I did not want to be alone with him in my classroom." That is how disruptive his behavior was. Outside of the classroom, his behavior was just as bad, if not worse. According to some that knew him during this time, Nikolas picked fights randomly in the halls, blurted out very inappropriate things, and even destroyed school property. Knowing that all of this was happening in middle school, and still nothing serious was done in order to correct his behavior, is baffling to me. I wish that he had gotten the help that he so clearly needed before the events we will talk about in a little while. According to the Independent.com, sometime during the time that Nikolas was in middle school, his mother, Linda, filled out a form for a behavioral assessment that was conducted by a Broward County school social worker, Liliana Pardo Passi. Some of the things she wrote are certainly interesting. Linda herself noted that she believed something was very wrong with her son. She claimed that while she didn't know what it was, she knew that it had to be something else other than his ADHD. Linda wrote about Nikolas's aggressive and violent behavior, stating that his outbursts would usually start when he was playing games on his Xbox. She wrote that he was very much a sore loser and had low self-esteem, which contributed to his tantrums. She wrote, "He can't stand to lose, gets angry and curses people playing with him." Again, Nikolas's aggressive behavior was focused on his mother a lot of the time. Linda could not control the two boys and even made at least 24 calls to police between 2011 and 2016, seeking help for her out-of-control sons. The reasoning behind many of the calls included the boys harming her, fighting, them destroying her property, being extremely disrespectful, or running away from home. Like I just stated, it was when Nikolas was entering his teen years that he and his brother's behavior continued getting worse. Both he and Zachary apparently began taking baseball bats to the walls, littering them with massive holes. Nikolas also constantly destroyed furniture, and it's reported that on at least one occasion in November of 2011, when Nikolas was 13, Linda herself was struck by a bat. She subsequently called police, but there isn't much more information about the incident. Again, Linda had issues with both boys. Zachary also had a tendency to throw things around the home when he was angry, and those episodes would usually end in a call to 911 as well. It's reported that in November of 2012, Nikolas hit Linda with a plastic hose from a vacuum after she told him he wasn't allowed to be on his computer. This resulted in yet another call to the local police, who then responded to the home. However, Nikolas had already left at that point. There was also a time that he threw her against the wall when she told him he wasn't allowed to play his Xbox. Again, police would come out to the neighborhood very often, but if anything could have been done to actually stop Nikolas's behavior, it wasn't. The Independent.com reports that both Nikolas and Zachary found it entertaining when their behavior upset their mother, and that they thought it was funny to see her overwhelmed. I read on WashingtonPost.com that the use of the Baker Act in connection with Nikolas was brought up around this time. The Baker Act is a Florida law that allows for the involuntary examination and temporary detention of individuals experiencing a mental health crisis. Apparently, mental health professionals determined that Nikolas would not benefit from being held under the Baker Act, so it was never pursued. Around this time in his life, Nikolas had a youth case manager, a woman named Tiffany Forrest. She attested to some of the things Linda wrote in the previous form for the behavioral assessment, agreeing that playing video games usually set Nikolas off. She also added that he would fly into a rage if he wasn't allowed to play, stating that he would scream at his mother in the process. Tiffany also reported about Nikolas and Zachary's relationship. She confirmed that Zachary would often bully Nikolas, despite being younger, saying, Zachary would say a lot of provoking things to Nikolas, call him names. Tiffany also recalled that one time she witnessed Zachary climb onto the counter and step in the bowl of cereal that Nikolas was eating. Eventually, Nikolas was removed from West Glades Middle School before the end of 8th grade and was sent to Cross Creek, a school that specialized in students with emotional and behavioral issues. It's reported that Nikolas did relatively well in this alternative school, which eventually enabled him to return to a normal school setting. Jumping back to his personal life for just a moment, during his teenage years, Nikolas began exhibiting violent behavior towards small animals. It's reported that at some point, his dog died after eating a poisonous toad, and so Nikolas began hunting down toads in the area, torturing, killing, and cutting them up. I read that there were also times where Nikolas would shoot at squirrels with a pellet gun, trying to kill them. A former friend of his, named Brody, also recalled a time in which Nikolas had cornered a squirrel and was trying to kill it by throwing rocks at it. According to the Washington Post, Brody also claimed that one time Nikolas threw eggs at his car, after which he chased him back to his house. Brody then knocked on the door, and when Linda answered, Brody told her about what happened. According to him, she brushed it off, saying, "No, my son would never do that. He's inside sleeping." There are a few reports of odd behavior like this when it came to Linda disciplining the kids. She was seemingly dismissive about a lot, and at times failed to punish the boys when they deserved it. Again, she was a single mom, and was older than most women who have teenagers, both of which likely contributed to that. But also, she was self-admittedly scared of her sons, which definitely had an effect on how she parented. Back to Nikolas's fascination with hurting animals. The Washington Post also reported that someone in the neighborhood once saw him ramming long sticks into rabbit holes as hard as he could, trying to impale and kill any creature occupying it. That article also reported that Nikolas would sneak over into his neighbor's yard and would try to get his dogs to attack their pigs. He also targeted other small animals, such as iguanas, birds, raccoons, and lizards. Moving on, like stated before, it was about 2 years after being transferred to Cross Creek that Nikolas was moved again, this time back to a normal school, with it being Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, where he began 10th grade. Instead of repeating the school's full name several times throughout the video, I'm going to refer to it by Stoneman Douglas for the most part. It was here that he eventually joined the school's JROTC program, which stands for Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. In this group, Nikolas was exposed to shooting training, using both real and air-powered firearms. A former member of the same group later recalled that Nikolas was an exceptional shot. While none of them expected Nikolas to later shoot up the school, they did say that looking back, there were a few warning signs. One member said that Nikolas constantly talked about knives and guns, and that he liked to wear military-style clothing to school. He also echoed that Nikolas found enjoyment in hurting animals, stating, "He told me he would attack little animals with pellet guns and stuff, and I was a little weirded out by that." Nikolas also reportedly spoke about wanting to join the US Army after graduation, something that he never achieved. Moving on, though Nikolas had been reported several times to authorities for his concerning actions in the past, it wasn't until February of 2016 that things got a lot more serious. It was during this time, when Nikolas was 17 years old, that someone called to make a report that Nikolas actually planned to commit a school shooting. He had apparently made a post to Instagram that threatened an attack on a school, paired with a photo of himself posing with guns. According to the Miami Herald, the officer that took the report came to the conclusion that Nikolas was in possession of knives and a BB gun, and this information was passed on to Scott Peterson, the school resource officer at Stoneman Douglas. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like much came out of this report. I also saw that a friend of Nikolas later claimed that one time during lunch, Nikolas brought up that he wanted to shoot up their school, but that he would avoid shooting those he was talking to because he liked them. The timeline on this is unclear, so I'm not sure exactly when this took place. His friend said that while Nikolas did make threats similar to this a few times, he didn't take Nikolas seriously, and so he did not report it to anyone at the school. Many of those around him at school had strange interactions with him. Some of these recounts aren't dated, so it's impossible to know exactly when they happened, so just keep that in mind. I read on multiple sources that Nikolas brought several items to school that concerned his peers. He brought knives, bullets, and even deceased animals with their heads cut off to show off to other students. I never saw anything that suggested anyone reported that Nikolas brought actual weapons to school, so unfortunately, I don't believe that the staff had any knowledge that he was in possession of knives while on campus. Another recalled that he once showed him a lunchbox filled to the brim with bullets. Apart from that, some of his fellow students witnessed his racist and bigoted remarks. One of Nikolas's classmates who rode on the bus with him later recalled that Nikolas would often make jokes about Jewish people, Nazis, and Hitler. They also claimed that he would even say stuff like, he wished all Jewish people would die. This student also remembered Nikolas making racist remarks about black people, with another person recalling that he said he wanted to shoot them. Nikolas also carved and wrote swastikas on objects, which he was later asked about in an interview.
Any time where someone might have thought you were carving like a swastika on a table or something like that?
My friends told me to do that, and they did it as well. And I did that for attention. And anything that I drew swastika or said nasty remarks about race or gender equality or anything like that, it was all for attention.
Okay.
It's reported that in August of 2016, Nikolas began messaging another teenager named Anaya on Instagram, threatening him and demanding that he stay away from his ex-girlfriend, who had apparently started dating Anaya around the time. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to track down any information about Nikolas's ex-girlfriend or when they dated. Anaya claimed that a week or two after school started that year, Nikolas approached him and apologized for the messages, to which Anaya accepted. But then, as he did before, Nikolas got upset once again and began sending threatening messages to Anaya, who ignored them. This time, though, Anaya decided to report the threats to the school in hopes that they would cease. According to him, they said they would take care of it, and so he went on with his day. Sometime later, when Anaya and his friends were leaving school, they noticed that Nikolas was closely trailing them. Nikolas apparently again demanded that Anaya cut contact with his ex-girlfriend. Deciding that it wasn't worth it to argue, Anaya walked away before Nikolas began running at him with a pencil in each hand. Anaya outran Nikolas and again reported this incident to the school. Then, on another day, Nikolas again approached Anaya and initiated a fight between the two, which was actually caught on camera, and the both of them were suspended. After this, Nikolas reportedly kept sending hostile messages to Anaya for a while, before they stopped altogether. I'm unsure if this happened during or after the fight between Nikolas and Anaya, but in September of 2016, a school counselor reported to the school's resource officer that Nikolas may have ingested gasoline and that he had attempted to kill himself by cutting his arms. He had posted videos to Snapchat of him cutting himself, and also talking about the desire to buy a gun, both of which concerned the school. It's reported by the Miami Herald that they initiated a threat assessment on Nikolas in response to what he was talking about and doing. It stated that a mental health professional advised against involuntarily committing Nikolas under the Baker Act once again, despite all of these red flags. It's reported that at this time, Nikolas was receiving therapy from Henderson Behavioral Health. It's also noted that the Florida Department of Children and Families conducted an investigation on Nikolas, but ultimately determined that he was of no threat to himself or others, despite him having fresh cut marks on his arms. His mother, Linda, also reportedly stated that Nikolas had been talking a lot about purchasing guns around this time. I saw on a few different sources that at some point, counselors strongly advised that Linda not let Nikolas buy any guns, but that she completely disregarded their concerns. I'm not sure if that happened during this exact time frame, as nowhere really specified when this conversation took place. Nevertheless, mental health professionals at some point attempted to discourage Linda from allowing him to purchase any firearms, but she sadly did not take their advice. It was in his late teens that Nikolas began collecting various firearms. It's reported that Nikolas bought his first gun at 18 years old, before then going on to purchase many more within the next year. According to usatoday.com, Nikolas's mother even took him to buy a few of them, and she claimed that he told her they were for protection, but also because they looked cool. I read that it was in February of 2017 that Nikolas purchased a Smith & Wesson M&P 15, a semi-automatic rifle, which is the weapon he would later use in his attack. His mother was with him for the purchase, and it's reported that before he was able to pick it up, Linda called the store and asked them not to release it to him unless she was there, saying, "Because he's just young, and I just want to make sure he's safe and everything." Since he was 18 and an adult, they weren't able to do that. But according to SunSentinel.com, they told her if she felt he was unfit to own it, that might be a different story. Apparently, Linda repeated herself, saying, "No, he's fine. I just want to make sure he's safe, you know. He's young. The first gun." Backing up just a bit, Linda had confided in a few people while raising Nikolas. One, a family friend, Marnie, later recalled that Linda was prepared to have Nikolas in the home forever. Marnie said, "She just always used to say, 'I just want him to get out of high school. I just want him to get out of high school.' She said, 'I know he's never going to be able to move out.'" Marnie also corroborated descriptions of Nikolas's behavior, stating that he often had screaming episodes, some directed towards his mother. Marnie stated that he would tell Linda things like, "Go fuck yourself," and "I wish you would die." Marnie also added, "He pushed her, you know. He was very violent with her." Marnie had known the family for about 7 years at this point, so she had seen his problematic behavior for a number of years. She also confirmed that he was very abusive and would throw things around when in the middle of an episode, stating that he made everyone around him nervous. Marnie also claimed that Linda would be as quiet as possible in the house, so as to not set Nikolas off, since he owned guns and she was afraid of him. Yet, like we already know, Linda enabled him to keep purchasing them. An employee from the bank that Linda used also came forward with her recollection about the Cruz family. Though she didn't speak to Linda very often, even she knew of the chaos going on in the home. The bank employee later stated that it was during phone calls with Linda that she would hear Nikolas screaming at her in the background. It's reported that she even once heard Nikolas threaten to kill Linda and set the home on fire. During the later Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission meeting, they spoke about a lot of the troubles within the home, including the fact that Nikolas threatened his mother. Part of the transcript from this meeting reads, "He repeatedly told Linda to kill herself, but if she wouldn't, he would do it for her and burn the house down with her in it, so he could watch her burn." It got so bad in the house that Linda even spoke about possibly relinquishing her parental rights to both boys. Someone close to her later said, "I don't think she would have done it. She loved the boys more than anything in the world. She was just fed up with not getting anywhere, tired of how she was being treated. And she was saying, 'Why am I doing this to myself?'" In August of 2017, about a year after their first interaction on Instagram took place, the messages between Nikolas and Enea started back up once again. This time, though, they consisted of death threats. Nikolas at one point wrote, "You underground Hispanic wall jumper, I will fucking destroy you." He also sent a photo of his firearms laid out on his bed, followed by a message reading, "Don't fuck with me." Enea informed Nikolas that he had broken up with Nikolas's ex in December, but that didn't stop the waves of threatening messages from coming in. A few of the many read, "You have no idea what I'm capable of. I'm going to fucking kill you. I'm going to watch you bleed. I'm going to shoot you dead." I believe that it was in early 2017, before these messages took place, that Nikolas had been expelled from Stoneman Douglas, moving on to an adult learning program. Enea later claimed that at this time, he did not take any of the messages seriously, stating, "I did not really think much, because he was no longer going to our school. I just thought nothing of it at the time." Though he didn't take the direct threats seriously, Enea later said that Nikolas was known in the school for his aggressive behavior. Enea also later stated that he and his friends along with anyone else who interacted with Nikolas, knew that if anything was really to happen at the school, like a shooting, that he probably was the only one with enough hate to do so. In August, it's reported that Nikolas showed up at Stoneman Douglas on the first day back to school after summer break. One of the teachers asked him if he was attending the school once again, and he said yes. It was quickly found out that Nikolas was, in fact, not enrolled at the school, and he was subsequently escorted off campus. In the same month, August of 2017, it's reported that Nikolas joined a small group chat on Instagram, in which racism was a near constant theme according to CNN.com. Their article reads, "The hatred he and others in the group espoused met little resistance from its active members." In one part of the group chat, Cruz wrote that he hated Jews, and immigrants. He also apparently wrote about wanting to kill people of color, noting that he hated black people in particular, just for being black. He also reportedly spoke about keeping them chained up before slitting their necks. His hatred extended to Mexicans and white women as well, notably those in interracial relationships, with Nikolas referring to them as traitors. Unsurprisingly, the group also spoke about hating gay people, with Nikolas agreeing and commenting, "Shoot them in the back of head." It's also reported that Nikolas met a 13-year-old girl on Instagram through a page dedicated to teenagers who harmed themselves or were considering suicide. They both apparently lied about their age, with her telling him she was 2 years older than she was, and him claiming he was 2 years younger than he was. The two of them would talk about what was going on in their lives, and Nikolas reportedly opened up quite a bit to her. The girl later stated, "He was angry at the school because he got bullied a lot. He said he was pushed around and beat up sometime. He said it made him feel very sad and that he hated the school because of it." Despite this, the Miami Herald claims that there wasn't much evidence to suggest Nikolas was heavily bullied or beaten up in school. The young girl said that Nikolas had talked about going shooting, but had never made his desire to kill people apparent to her. She also stated that about 2 weeks before the shooting, Nikolas began to withdraw from their conversations, before going completely silent. This obviously took place a little further into the future, so let's back up for a minute. In September of 2017, a user on YouTube named Nikolas Cruz made a comment stating, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." The video's creator, who lived in Mississippi, then reported the comment as a tip through email to the FBI. And though a Guardian lead was initiated, unfortunately they never tied it to Nikolas. According to FBI.gov, this was due to the fact that the agents involved believed that there was no way to determine the identity of the person that made the comment. On November 1st, 2017, Nikolas's mother passed away from pneumonia at the age of 68, meaning that he and his brother now had no parents. At this time in his life, Nikolas was 19, and he went to live with a few different families following his mother's passing. He was working at Dollar Tree during this time, and was also enrolled in an adult education program to earn his GED. Very shortly after Linda's death, her cousin Catherine apparently contacted authorities and urged them to take a look at Nikolas and seize his firearms. The Broward County Sheriff's Office, or BSO, later stated that a close family friend agreed to take his firearms. One person that he stayed with was a neighbor and friend of the family, Roxanne Deschamps, who, according to NPR.org, had previously promised Nikolas and Zachary's mother, Linda, on her deathbed, that she would take the boys in upon her passing. And so she did. But very quickly after opening her home to them, they didn't see eye to eye on some things. Roxanne was not a fan of Nikolas's gun collection and was unwilling to let him keep them in her home. According to Roxanne, Linda had previously told her about a time that Nikolas had held a rifle to her head, which very obviously concerned her. Roxanne also said that since they were neighbors, she knew he had guns in the home. Because Roxanne was uncomfortable with Nikolas bringing them into the house, she made him store them elsewhere. Upon moving in, Roxanne stated that Nikolas was on his best behavior, but that it didn't last very long whatsoever. According to NPR.org, Roxanne called 911 on him 3 times within the duration of his stay. The first was placed when the family discovered Nikolas had purchased another gun and ammunition, but had not yet picked the firearm up. Roxanne, again, was uncomfortable having any firearm that belonged to Nikolas in the home, so she attempted to have the police prevent him from getting it. Of course, they weren't able to do that, but I wasn't able to determine exactly how the situation was resolved. The second call was placed when Nikolas was discovered digging a hole in the backyard, attempting to bury a large gun box, though it was apparently empty. The third and final call was placed when Nikolas began exhibiting aggressive behavior and was punching walls. It's reported that in November of 2017, Nikolas got into a fight with Roxanne's 22-year-old son. He even apparently threatened to return to the home with his guns. Despite this very scary threat, the family did not want to press charges against Nikolas. After that, Roxanne understandably decided that having Nikolas in the home was not an option any longer, even if she had promised Linda to watch over the boys. Roxanne later stated, "I told him I could not have guns and violence in my house, and he had to find another place to stay. I could not live in fear in my own home." Just the next day, on November 30th, 2017, yet another report came into the BSO. This time, the unidentified caller from Massachusetts told authorities that Nikolas was collecting weapons such as firearms and knives. The caller also said that they believed Nikolas would kill himself one day, and also stated they believe he could be a school shooter in the making. Unfortunately, this warning yielded no results, and it stated that the BSO didn't even go as far as to write a report on the tip, and instead requested that the caller submit the report to the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, since that was where Nikolas was living at the time. Sadly, this caller was right about one thing. Nikolas would go on to commit an attack on a school within just months of the call being placed. Nikolas later recalled that it was sometime in mid-December that he attempted suicide. 2 months after the last report, another tip was submitted, this time through the FBI's tip line. On January 5th, 2018, someone who was a close friend of the Cruz family, according to the FBI, reported that Nikolas had a blatant desire to kill people, and that they believed he could be planning a school shooting. In their report, it stated that the caller said that he had previously threatened to kill his mother with a firearm, that he had been mutilating and torturing small animals, that he had purchased several weapons, and that he was on the verge of exploding. It's reported on FBI.gov that the caller had even got into contact with the Parkland Police Department, but wanted to make sure that someone was going to look into the situation. Following the call, it stated that the agents assigned to investigate it searched through the FBI databases and found the Guardian lead that had been initiated a few months before in Mississippi. Their report states, the operator then consulted with her supervisor, and the matter was closed. The information received was never forwarded to a field office or to any of our state or local partners for further review or action. Unfortunately, like everything else that had come before it, this warning slipped through the cracks, and it failed to be reported to the FBI office in Miami, Florida. A little while before the shooting took place, a neighbor captured a video showing Nikolas in his backyard, wearing only underwear, socks, and a Make America Great Again hat, while shooting a BB gun. It's not clear exactly whose house he was at during this time. Not long after this, all of the concern about Nikolas becoming a threat to others came true. Just about 3 months after Nikolas's mother died, he chose to commit what would become the deadliest shooting to take place at a high school in United States history. At this point, According to the BSO's official overview of the incident, there had been 49 calls to them involving Nikolas or his address. None of them were serious enough to constitute an arrest, though, and in fact, Nikolas had no arrests on his record prior to February of 2018. In the time right before the shooting took place, Nikolas was living with his friend, JT Sneed's family. According to reports, their friendship was a bit new, but they opened their house to Nikolas anyway. JT was reportedly a junior at Stoneman Douglas, the same high school that Nikolas had previously attended. The father of the house, James, had several guns, all of which were hidden out of sight in the home. Upon Nikolas moving in, the family were aware that he also owned guns, and seemingly didn't have a problem with it. Apparently, their only stipulation was that he keep the guns in a locked cabinet and only take them out if he got permission to do so. James later stated that he believed they had possession of the only key to the cabinet, but that was apparently not the case. The Sneeds later claimed that they knew that Nikolas was depressed about the death of his mother, and that he was getting into a bit of trouble recently, but not that he tortured animals or would soon turn violent towards other people. According to them, he followed the rules in the house and was generally pleasant to be around.
And as far as the animals goes, I am very much an animal person. Anybody who knows me knows that. There's no way I'd let anybody in my house if I thought he was torturing animals at all. And if we'd known anything about the Instagram accounts, or I don't even know how to use Instagram, I'm a little old school, but if we had known anything about that, he wouldn't have even been in our home. That wouldn't even been an option.
And do you have a message?
It later came out that at least a few people had warned the Sneeds about Nikolas's concerning actions. Roxanne Deschamps, the woman who had taken him and his brother in directly after the death of their mother, was one of them. The Sneeds later stated, "Miss Deschamps informed us of warning signs of his behavior, which occurred in her home, and that he had chosen to keep his rifle over continuing to live with her." But she wasn't the only one who had tried to warn them of the threat Nikolas posed. Catherine, Linda's cousin, who had reportedly previously warned the authorities of Nikolas, also got in contact with the Sneeds, with them later stating, "Kathy Blaine informed us that Nikolas Cruz was violent, dangerous, infatuated with guns and knives, untrustworthy, and threatened to kill people on Instagram, among other things." I find this quote interesting in particular, because like we just heard a minute ago, the Sneeds came out after the shooting and claimed they had no idea he was posting concerning things on Instagram, and if they had known, they wouldn't have let him stay. Either way, very sadly, the Sneeds didn't take either of these clear warnings seriously. They also unfortunately failed to verify that Nikolas's guns were locked up and secure, something that they claim haunts them to this day. Nikolas only stayed with the Sneeds for a few months, so it's obvious that they wouldn't have known him very well, and it would be tough to pick up on any unusual behavior of his. I wholeheartedly believe they had good intentions when it came to opening their home to him, but it's very unfortunate that things played out the way they did. Before we move on to the attack, I wanted to go over the contents of Nikolas's phone, which was later discovered by authorities. Nikolas made several concerning searches in the time leading up to the shooting, some of which included shooting people massacre, is killing people easy, therapist for homicidal, Virginia Tech massacre, school shooter footage, school shooters, how long does it take for a cop to show up at a school shooting, I wanna die, good songs to play while killing people. He also had numerous photos stored on the device, including ones of himself, some where he was posing with firearms, and some where he was dressed in tactical gear. He also had pictures of various dead animals, Nazi propaganda, and firearms. Also on the phone were screenshots of various things, including videos on YouTube about guns, Instagram posts about how to hold a gun, and a meme on how to properly commit suicide. Just 12 days before his attack, Nikolas took a screenshot of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School's schedule. In the days leading up to the shooting, Nikolas also reportedly took 3 videos on his phone, in which he discussed his chilling plans to end the lives of at least 20 people at his former school.
Hello, my name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds. I think I can get done. Location is Stone Douglas in Parkland, Florida. It's going to be a big event. And when you see me on the news, you'll all know who I am. You're all going to die. Pew, 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 pew. Yeah. Can't wait. Today is the day that it all begins. The day of my massacre shall begin. All the kids in school will run in fear and hide. From the wrath of my power, they will know who I am. I am nothing, I am no one. My life is nothing and meaningless. Everything that I hold dear, I let go beyond your half. Every day, I see the world ending another day. I live a lone life, live in seclusion and solitude. I hate everyone and everything. With the power of my AR, you will all know who I am. I had enough of being told what to do and when to do. I had enough of being telling me that I'm an idiot and a dumbass. But in real life, you're all the dumbass. You're all stupid and brainwashed by these fucking political government programs. You will all see, you will all know who my name is. My love for you, Angie, will never go away. I hope to see you in the afterlife. On one day or another, you will end and we'll all die. Alright, so here's the plan. I'm gonna go take an Uber in the afternoon before 2:40. From there, I'll go onto school campus, walk up the stairs, unload my bags, and get my AR and shoot people down at the main courtyard. I'll wait, and people will die.
All right, I think this is a good spot to end the first part. Don't worry though, part 2 is already up and ready to be watched. So please make sure to head over to that video to finish learning about the case.